Alright guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be investigating what made an elemental shaman so good in the Burning Crusade. Hopefully by the end of this video you will have a better understanding of the class and the spec, therefore the decision of whether to play an elemental shaman will be easier for you. By the way guys, I've started posting some high quality mediocre content on my Instagram of me hiking in the Lake District and the occasional anabolic cottage pie recipe. So if you want to follow me, there's a link in the description. So in order to understand what made an elemental shaman suddenly a viable and desired class in the Burning Crusade, we must understand why in classic WoW you will see raid groups with 7 mages and not 7 elemental shamans. The major issue was mana. Shamans simply had huge mana issues since without consumables they would go very quickly. If mana wasn't an issue and shamans had the freedom to use Chain Lightning on cooldown, a debuff slot for Flame Shock, Earth Shock on cooldown, Searing Totem and max rank Lightning Bolt as a filler, then in all honesty they probably would compete with a mage on the DPS meters. Unfortunately that isn't possible because with that kind of rotation you would go in about 30 seconds, even in TBC you would go very quickly with that rotation. The reason mages don't have this issue is firstly because spamming Frostbolt or Firebolt is a very mana efficient rotation due to Frostspec having a mana cost reduction talent and the Fire Tree having a talent that refunds the mana cost of crit damage. And secondly, mages have overpowered mana regeneration cooldowns like Evocation and Mana Jet. Shamans did obviously have Mana Spring Totem, Mana Tide Totem and a clear casting talent, but the benefits just simply weren't enough. I'm not saying Shaman isn't totally unviable in Classic, but you can't really see the true potential of a class because of its limitations, and it's nowhere near going to be as good as a mage. However, when the Burning Crusade rocks up, this all begins to change, so first of all let's take a look at the 2 key talents that fixed Elemental's serious mana issues. First of all, we have the Unrelenting Storm talent that allows mana equal to 10% of your total intellect stat to continue regenerating in combat every 5 seconds. So essentially you get a free passive Mana Spring Totem that continues to get stronger the better gear you get. And secondly, the clear casting talent got a massive buff and a rework. Instead of having a flat 10% chance to proc, it will proc on every single critical strike and reduce the mana cost of spells by 40% of the next 2 spells. So yet another talent that scales incredibly well when you get better gear, because the more crit chance you get means more mana efficiency, much like a Holy Paladin's Illumination talent. So overall, Elemental Shaman were very strong DPS due to their high damage and mana efficiency. From what I've seen from playing private servers, most Elemental Shamans seem to do as much DPS as a mage, but probably just under a mage in most fights. They did more DPS than all the melee DPS in early tiers, but obviously nowhere near as much DPS as the King DPS classes in TBC, the Hunter and the Warlock. However, one could argue that despite an Elemental Shaman not doing as much DPS as a Hunter or Warlock, they bring more value to a raid than those classes, because they boost the DPS of those Hunters and Warlocks by a good country mile. Because an Elemental Shaman value isn't solely in their DPS but the support they bring to the raid. The first big support ability is Heroism or Bloodlust, depending on what faction you play. This ability would increase their melee, range and spell casting speed by 30% for everyone in the party, not the raid like it does in retail. This meant one Bloodlust would only affect 5 people, but it had no debuff restriction, so you could use it as many times as you wanted with multiple different shamans. This meant that stacking shamans became very useful in TBC raiding. It's very likely that Horde guilds are going to have a huge advantage when it comes to the world first race if classic TBC is released. Especially as Horde will probably be able to get a level 20 or so Blood Elf to just give everyone Blessing of Kings outside of the raid and then leave the raid. But anyway, the next big buff a Shaman brought was Totem of Wrath, a fire totem at the end of the elemental tree that boosted the party's crit and hit chance by 3%. This was a very powerful DPS boost, not only because of the crit chance, but the hit chance meant that less hit rating gear was required, which meant Shamans could equip more crit gear instead, which is obviously a big boost to DPS, and if other DPS in your raid knew that they were always going to be grouped with an Elemental Shaman, they also didn't have to stack as much hit gear, so it just made their lives much easier, and again they could stack you know, more haste or hit crit gear to boost their DPS. In TBC, Shamans also got a new Air Totem, the Wrath of Air Totem, that increased a party's spell power by 101, boosted to 120 with 2 pieces of tier 4 gear, so that's basically as good as having an extra piece of spell power gear equipped. In fact, in early raid tiers in TBC, it's providing the equal amount of spell power to a spell power weapon. And these are only the support abilities uniquely added in the Burning Crusade. Obviously it goes without mentioning all the other advantages a Shaman brings to any raid group currently present in Classic WoW, such as Wind Fury Totem, Strength of the Earth, Resistance Totems, Threat Reduction Totems, Mana Totems, Stone Claw Totems, Earthbind Totem, and, you know, everything like that. It's also worth mentioning that Shamans use a trick in Burning Crusade with totems to pull trash packs in heroic dungeons, so that only one of the mobs is pulled at a time from the trash pack. Depending on how difficult heroic dungeons are going to be, and depending obviously if a trick actually works, Shamans are going to be mandatory for any heroic dungeon. So let's go through some final thoughts. As I've probably proved by now, an Elemental Shaman is very strong, viable and desired spec for TBC raiding. Their mana issues were fixed with key talents, their damage was buffed, and so was their support capabilities. In TBC, Shamans are in extremely high demand because of all the advantages they bring. They're going to be even more desired on the Alliance side because it's a possibility that people who want to roll a Shaman will have to start from level 1 if Classic TBC, you know, if it actually launches, if Blizzard don't decide to release the races early on in a pre-patch. I think if they don't release Shamans early on, obviously, Blood Elves and Draenei, I honestly think that Shamans, well, not a lot of people are going to even have the mentality to roll a Shaman or a Blood Elf, because it's just going to take so long for you to actually level up, and a lot of people just want to experience TBC content as fast as possible. So, bearing that in mind, I think Shamans are going to be just extremely rare if Classic TBC does launch. Maybe not so much on, obviously, the Horde side when it comes to Paladins, because a lot of people just really love Blood Elf Paladins for some reason. Well, let's be honest, they are pretty cool. And a lot of people don't really like Draenei very much. It's not really a very popular class if you look at statistics across, you know, servers and everything. Draenei is a kind of like a low populated race. So, yeah, I just think Shamans are going to be really rare if Classic TBC launches, which means if you make the effort to roll a Shaman from level 1, I would also recommend going to not leveling in the Draenei leveling zone if you're going to do that. I'll make videos about that in the future. But I honestly think it's a really good choice. I'm also debating it myself whether to roll a Shaman in TBC, because everyone is just going to need you so much, particularly if you level up extremely fast and you're one of like the top 100 Shamans to get to level 70 on your server. People are just going to want you so much in their dungeon groups and in their raids. It's going to be just so easy to get a group and get geared up quickly. But anyway, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is Goblin. Until my next video, ciao.